Hi again. I'm going to talk a little bit more about. I'm going to continue on the tutorial, let's say, from the spin from the last video, and show you another couple of things, another couple of dynamics that affect the spin into the green. Now these are control circumstances off a flat lie to a dead flat green area. This is a little chip in pitching green that I kind of put together, and when Course Forge goes live and into the future of Perfect Golf, you'll have lots of these things because people will be making ranges and practice bunkers and all kind of stuff like that for you to practice on. But this is mine, so this gives me kind of controlled environment to work on the physics and things like that. So last time we talked about adding extra power to the shot to create more spin. There's a few more factors. Obviously, wind. If you're hitting into the wind, your ball will tend to hold up a little bit more, and it will come down a little bit softer, and it will generate more spin. Downwind is the opposite. It's obviously going to release out a little more. So again, there's no God-given right to be able to spin the ball enough to always get the ball close to the hole in every circumstance, especially if you're playing on harder surfaces. Sometimes you just have to say, well, the best I can do from here is 20 or 30 feet away, and under those circumstances it's a good shot. And don't forget, if you're playing in a tournament, everybody else is playing the same conditions as you and they will have the same problems, and sometimes it's survival of the fittest. It's not all about the guy who can just knock the pins out. It's about sometimes accepting that you can't realistically get the ball close. Play for the best position that will give yourself an easier putt, maybe an uphill putt, and let the other guy try and get it too close and dump it in the bunker in front of the green. And this is part of the fun of golf and tournament plays. Kind of, you have those decisions to make. It's not all about just aiming for the flag every shot and hoping for the best. So another thing that affects spin rates is the trajectory you hit it on. Now in Perfect Golf we use a kind of the shot shaper tool here where you can kind of draw it or fade it or hit high shots or low shots. This is not really, a lot of people think this is the contact point on the ball. It's not. This is just, there's lots of ways in real life that real pros change the trajectory of the shots. It's not all about moving the ball back in your stance like some people have suggested we do. Loads of tour pros play low shots from the ball position exactly where they play it for their high shots. They just have different impact conditions that they generate through their slightly different techniques through the ball. So it's not just as easy as saying you should close your stance to hit a draw or move the ball forward to hit a high shot, etc. In the real world that just doesn't stack up. So there's no point us putting that in the game because we're kind of forcing people to kind of do something that really doesn't necessarily have a real world comparison. So we put a kind of a system in here where you can choose high or low shots, and how you would do that in real life would be down to your personal preference. So how do high and low shots affect the spin rate? Well, it's quite a complex formula, and it's there's so many variables. Once you start to incorporate the differences of the lie, the differences of the green slope, and the spin you put in on the ball with extra power or less power, and then combine your trajectory in with that, you can see we have a lot of variables here, which is great. We don't have as many variables as real life. Here, real life is like you have the butterfly effect where your little blade of grass gets between the club and the ball and takes spin off. We don't have that. But so it is a little bit simplified. But there's if you think about the dynamics of adding loft or taking loft away and hitting with the same sort of power, it's an interesting dynamic. There's something called kind of friction spin, and this is to do with where on the club the ball is hit, the trajectory of the shot. I mean, for example, if you're playing off very tight fairways on a links course, what will tend to happen is when you hit a perfect shot, the ball will hit, you will strike the ball and it will hit the first 2 or 3 grooves on that club face, and you will get a lower trajectory on that shot. And because of the lower trajectory, and because of the angle of impact and the loft of the face and the compression of the ball, etc., you will get more spin on that shot. So it will fly lower, but it will have more spin. So you'll find that hitting a normal shot, and I think we hit a normal pitching wedge before, if you've seen the previous tutorial, and it kind of bounced forward and skipped back a little bit, maybe 2 or 3 feet it spun back. So if I lower the trajectory on this, okay, simulating what I just told you about, and then kind of hit an extra power shot, okay, watch what happens to the ball when it lands. It will skip forward a little bit more, but then it has a lot more spin on it. So, you know, the net result for that is, you know, you've only had 3 yards from where it pitched, then it bounced forward maybe 6 or 7 yards and then spun back. So you've only got 2 yards difference there from where it pitched, just by lofting it downwards. That doesn't work with all clubs. Again, it's highly, you know, there's so many variables involved. It will be slightly different with all clubs, but you have to experiment around and find out what works best for you under certain circumstances. If I loft up, what will happen? Well, actually, the ball coming down steeper will actually take spin off the ball and impact. Because if you think about it, if you're hitting into a real green, when the ball hits the green, it will kind of make a depression, a pitch mark in the green. And the deeper that pitch mark, the more spin, the more energy gets taken off the ball. So when the ball pops out of its pitch mark, it usually will have less spin on it. So although the ball is coming in steeper, so it will actually bounce a little bit less and sit down quicker, it won't have as much spin. So let me hit the loft all the way up. I'll hit the same thing. I'll hit an overswing, or an extra power shot rather. Okay, so you can see that ball sat down really quickly, but it didn't spin back, you know, for the reasons that I just mentioned. But the good thing about that, if I re-hit, if I keep it lofted up but only go to 100% rather than into the extra power zone, I'm relying on the trajectory of my shot to make the ball stop quicker rather than the spin. So I just went a little bit past 100%, but not too far. So again, that ball sits down pretty quickly. You know, it's sitting down within, you know, sort of 15 feet of where it lands, which, considering you didn't go into the overswing zone, or the overpower zone rather, I keep calling it overswing zone out of habit, but it's really not, it's just extra power. You know, considering that, you know, I didn't really kind of add any extra power to that, it sat down really quickly. So there's some extra dynamics there for you to play around with. Now, of course, you'll get to a point, let's say, for example, if you want to, if you're lofting down, but then you're hitting to a green that sits above you, maybe at the level of these trees up here, the forward momentum, the trajectory will be coming in so low and flat and fast that it will kind of override the spin. So you will get a much bigger skip forward and, you know, a bounce forward, and it will tend to release out even without, even, you know, with the extra spin on the ball. So in that circumstance, maybe you'd be better off hitting a higher shot, and then maybe you'd be better off hitting a higher shot with extra spin, you know, to get it to sit down as quickly as possible. All the circumstances are going to be different because we don't kind of pre-can all the shot physics, and, you know, like every time you hit a wedge it does this, every time you hit a 9-9 and do this, it does that. We don't do that. You know, we use real world formulas, we have real world ball data. When the ball hits the green, it's subject to all the different scenarios that real life golf is subject to, and therefore it's slightly unpredictable. And that's part of the beauty of it. It's kind of hitting the best shot you can, you know, having the best plan, and then, you know, hopefully you'll get the result you want. And generally, the more you practice and the more you know your game inside and out, what you can and what you can't do, and then you manage that game, then you'll turn into a really good player. It's not just about aiming at the flag and hitting the snap.